Sweet O Donuts. What a delightful name for a donut shop. Actually kind of sounds like a made-up donut shop from like a Tarantino movie. That is a tasty donut. Hey Vincent, you ever tried a Sweet O donut? They're tasty. So this morning I'm in Fullerton, California, and drove by this donut shop on the way to a client's property a little while back, and liked what I saw. So here I am. And broke out the 4x5, which I haven't used in a while actually. But this is going to be the perfect camera for this particular composition, because I have to utilize some compound lens and film movements in order to get the composition how I want. So basically, I want to shoot this building straight on, perfectly centered in the composition, because, well, but if I go perfectly centered to the building, I really don't get much of that monument sign. I would like to see more of the face of that monument sign. So what I've done here is I've picked up my entire camera and moved to the right. So I'm basically off center from the building. And I've squared up the camera to the building so that the film plane is parallel to the front of the building, but that of course puts the building off to the side, off to the left. So on a view camera, I can handle that problem quite easily. All I have to do is shift the film plane to one side, and then that centers the building again. So it kind of shifts the building back to the middle, even though I'm not centered with the building. And then, of course, I need to use some lens rise here to keep the camera perfectly level, but drop the building down lower in the composition where I want it. So these kind of movements just wouldn't be possible on a standard camera, a non-view camera. So that's the beauty of 4x5, baby. All right, so I'm doing exposure time of 8 seconds, which with reciprocity puts me at 15 seconds. My aperture is at f20. I don't have to do a real narrow aperture because the depth of field on this isn't huge, but all right, here we go. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. There's a lot to like about this photo. Or more accurately, there's a lot to like about the building. First off, with the architecture, I really love simple, standalone buildings like this that have kind of markers of mid-century design. For instance, the flat roof, the simple rectangle upon rectangle architecture, and then the brickwork down at the bottom, which if you've seen my previous video where I photographed a laundromat, you know that that type of brickwork is called stack bond masonry, a trademark of mid-century design. But more than the architecture, there are so many elements of the business and people that have occupied this building that I really love. From the crooked neon open sign to the old-fashioned menu board with its push-in letters, you can even see that they evidently ran out of some letters in the right size, and they used a small N on cinnamon and small E on special. They made do with what they got. I also love the stack of donut boxes off to the left ready to go. And then, of course, look at all those glorious donuts. Look at them. I can almost taste them. Now, with my camera placement and film shifts, I was able to get more of that monument sign. You can actually read the lettering here, which I don't think you'd be able to make out if I was perfectly squared up with the building. Now, I do wish this sign was on. It actually turned off pretty soon after I showed up. I basically just shot some B-roll with my video camera, and the thing turned off well before the light was right to get a photo. So that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Now, this whole shifting business that I did also helped create some space between Sweet O Donuts and the building next door. This little gap here I think is nice. It creates a little bit of isolation from this building to the one next to it. I used my Nikkor 210mm lens for this shot, which I think actually might be my sharpest large format lens. You can see the resolution is pretty impressive. But I must say that I did overestimate the depth of field I would get at the aperture I chose. You can see here that the cars are just ever so soft because the depth of field didn't quite stretch back far enough. But looking at it now, I'm actually glad that I overestimated it because having those cars soften up just a bit, I think helps the photo. By having the face of the building so tack sharp and the background just ever so slightly out of focus, it makes it stand out a little bit better. I'm going to be doing a bunch of shots this morning because I want to shoot it all throughout the changing light. This building has such a bright floodlight on the front that I think shooting early isn't going to really work too well. So it'll kind of flare out the lens and suck all the attention in the photo. Ooh, the light just went off. That kind of sucks actually. I got one exposure before that light went off. Oh man. All right, well, with the exterior light off now, I'm gonna wait until it's like kind of late-ish morning and the sky turns a little bit pink because then it'll be kind of a morning shot where you don't need that light. Whew. I'm glad I got those 2 frames off. Man, I can't believe that light shut off as I was talking about it. What are the odds of that? Well, for me, I guess like 100%. So now I'm gonna wait for the sun to rise a little bit more. And I'm shooting west right now, so the sun is actually rising behind me. And what I'm hoping is as the morning progresses, I'll start to get the earth shadow off to the west here. And the earth shadow is that blue strip that you see opposite to the rising or setting sun. That's that blue strip under the pink sky above it. And that blue strip is actually the Earth's shadow against its own atmosphere. So you get that blue shadow underneath and then the pink sky above, which the sunlight is hitting. And I'm hoping I'll get that this morning. And when I do, that's when I'm gonna fire. So I think that would be a nice little gradient of color. Boy, I hope I didn't screw up the exposure on those first 2 frames. Lots riding on those. Okay, so we're just starting to get a little bit of that earth shadow. You can see the blue strip underneath the slightly pinker strip above. Hopefully that'll get more colorful as the sun continues to rise, but I gotta start firing here. You can see how waiting just a bit dramatically changes the color palette and softens up the contrast a lot as the ambient light increases and begins to balance out with the artificial light. And I did get my lovely earth shadow with the blue tones along the horizon that fade to a much lighter pinkish purple above. And by the way, I placed the building so low in the composition because I really liked these crisscrossing power lines above and I wanted to make sure I gave them room without being clipped off. And I think in this version of the photo, you can see those power lines much better than you could in the first one. And another thing I like about this version over the first one is if we zoom in on the building, you can better see the old Sweet O Donut sign underneath the fancy new one. They obviously went to paint over it, but they didn't get the color match quite right. Now I stuck around and took a few more frames, one of them being this one. And you can see it's well past prime light Sky's a little bright for my taste, and the ambient light just completely washes out the interior light. So not the best timing for this shot. Looking at all three of them side by side, you can see what a difference timing makes on a scene like this. Now between the first two, I really can't decide which one I like the most. I think each has their merits. But I'm sure over time, one will rise to the top. All right, well, I think I got something usable there. I hope. There's actually two more locations here in Fullerton that I want to photograph. One is actually right next door, and I'll probably do that one at dusk, I think. And then the final shot is a strip mall down the street. And that one's gonna be a little tricky because I need very, very specific lighting for that one. So I need just the right cloud cover. It doesn't come by very often. So that one might take a while. So I was originally planning to photograph this little cafe that was right next door to the donut shop, but that kind of fell through. I was scouting it right after I shot that donut shop photo, and still early morning, and I was walking around looking for all these different angles, and I had my phone out, and I was taking pictures of all these different things, kind of looking suspicious. And then I happened to glance through the window into the building, and the chef was just standing there staring at me. And we made eye contact, so of course, nixed that one. But it's all right. I was on the fence on that building anyway. I didn't think it was going to photograph that well. I was kind of grasping at straws when I was figuring out compositions for it. So, but driving home after the donut shop, I happened upon another scene that I like even more. So, guess it worked out for the best. One nice thing about this shoot is I'll be able to stay right next to my car. I don't know why that's sweet, but I like it. Much like the donut shop, I was drawn to this scene partly for the architecture. You know, again, it's got those notes of mid-century design. But I was mostly drawn to the patina of human occupation. Between the aging structures themselves and all the clutter through the windows, kind of felt like I was photographing the artifacts of modern civilization. Almost like I'm an archaeologist, studying some ancient Aztec ruins in the jungle. Except it's an American thrift shop in Fullerton. And look at that, I'm not shooting it straight on. I'm really getting creative here. It is cloudy this morning, which is unfortunate. I don't really want a cloudy sky, but it's starting to break a little bit. Hoping it breaks early enough for when I want to take my shot. Just a waiting game now. I'm actually not even sure whether I want to shoot this in proper dusk, proper dawn, or wait until the morning light starts hitting it. Guess we'll just have to watch it. By the way, I'm using my Rodenstock 115 millimeter, which is without a doubt my most used lens for this kind of picture. Seems like if I'm shooting 6x17, I'm shooting a building. Like 70% of the time I'm using this Rodenstock, which is a great lens. It's sharp, but it's got some distortion, which I'm not crazy about. And it's actually really hard to see the ground glass when it's this dark out. There we go. Got one. Well, the parking lot lights just went out. So yeah, this video is just a story of lights turning off on me too early. But this one I think is all right, actually, because I'm not sure that light was really improving the shot. I don't really like flooded, just head-on light on buildings like this. It looks a little, I don't know, sterile, a little plain. So what I need now is just more ambient light. So I gotta wait for the sun to continue rising, and then hopefully it'll just get bright enough to match the interior. And this effing car better move. There we go. Unload your passenger and get the hell out of here. Start driving, start driving, start driving. Save myself 20 bucks. Yep, those floodlights definitely didn't help the photo. There's a mess of shadows on the building from the multiple light sources, which I'm not crazy about. Also, we get these hot spots on the awning. It's almost like there was some giant car with its high beams on, pointed directly at the building. I mean, the building looks like a deer in headlights. But without those floodlights, the building was essentially a black hole, except for the little bit of light coming through the windows. So I needed the ambient light to increase a lot before I could get a good exposure here. Man, there's a hawk over there that absolutely annihilated one of those pigeons. Fullerton's a rough town. Well, on a much less gruesome note, let's take a look at a pretty photo. So this actually came out much better than I expected. I was worried about the cloudy sky, but I think it actually worked pretty well for this scene. The Rodenstock lens I used for this shot has a pretty strong vignette, which you can see clearly here. And I know, a perfect lens is not really supposed to have a vignette, but I actually love the vignette on this lens. When I'm shooting scenes like this, it adds some character and adds some drama that I don't think I would get without it. And now some details about the photo that I really like, starting with the mannequin through the front door. So you got this kind of creepy figure standing there, and it's actually a little bit of a nod to some of my previous photos. So like the Houston's Liquor photo and 405 Donut, which I shot in orange, both had the clerk sitting in the window nice and still. So I had that one little human element in the photos. And this has that. Although it's a mannequin, it's not a real person, it adds that little bit of human element. And in case you're wondering, I did place myself very carefully so that mannequin was visible through the window. That wasn't by accident. I also love looking through the windows. You can see a lot of the clutter that's in this thrift shop, but more than that, you can see the signs indicating the different departments. I think that's kind of cool. Then there's the plastic owls on the roof, standing guard over the parking lot, and that one defiant white pigeon perched on the sign, clearly unfazed by the unusually stoic birds of prey above. And newspaper boxes. I can't believe those things are still around. And then finally, there's little markers in this photo that indicate the time period it was taken, which I think is going to cause the photo to kind of age in an interesting way. So first off, you got that welcome back sign. Clearly this store is reopening after the pandemic of 2020. But also there's signs in the window for wear a mask, and there's one over here that's advertising hand sanitizer for sale. I think all these elements come together to not only create an interesting photo, but one that kind of marks the time period. They're almost like little Easter eggs hidden throughout the scene that when someone's looking at this photo way in the future, they may be able to glean some more information from the shot than they would get just at first glance. So I literally just left the barbershop, had to get my mop chopped, and now I'm rushing over to Fullerton to photograph this next property because right now the lighting is perfect. I have exactly the cloud cover I was hoping for, and it's not going to last long, so I gotta make my way over there quick. But this next location is the analog photographer's ultimate dream. It's got a liquor store and a laundromat in the same photo. If there was just a gas station in there too, that would make it the analog photographer's trifecta. The hat trick! But I guess we'll just have to make do with a liquor store and a laundromat. Well, I am thrilled to report that the weather conditions are perfect. This is exactly the light I wanted, and exactly the sky I wanted. Got that real thin layer of cloud cover, real high up, which is diffusing light just enough to soften up those shadows. And it's looking good. I think this might be a success. First attempt. That never happens. Well, I'm in a pretty ridiculous position here with this tree crowding me. But this is the perfect spot for the framing I want. I gotta hustle because the light's changing a lot. The sun's moving in and out of the clouds here. Make it fast. Like to wait for some of these cars to clear out, but I'm gonna lose this light any second, so I'll just have a little more cars than I would typically like. Come on. Come on. Great. Jesus. These type of pictures are always frustrating. Too many elements out of my control. Okay, here we go. Come on. This type of photography is not normally associated with careful timing. You know, that's more of a street photography thing. But when you think about it, this is kind of like architectural street photography. I have all these people going about their business in my scene, and I need them to get into just the right position at just the right time. Or get the hell out of my photo completely, like this guy on a bike towing another bike. So timing is definitely a factor here, and I need to capture it at that decisive moment. Okay, we're almost there. Right on cue, the light changes. That may have been the only exposure that'll work. That cloud that was blocking the sun just burned off. I don't see any others coming. I really hope that came out. Well, I got the lighting that I was after for one single solitary frame. And you can see the shadows are quite pleasing here. They're soft, they're muted, they're not super dark, and the scene overall is just not as contrasty as it could have been without that slightly softened light source. Now, just to elaborate on what exactly was going on here, what type of light I was trying to get, I didn't want open sun because open sun is very harsh. The shadows are hard-edged and they're very dark compared to the highlights. I wanted it to be softer. And the way you soften a light source is you make it bigger. So basically what I needed was a giant natural soft box in the sky placed between the sun and the building to soften up that light just the right amount. And so what I needed was partly cloudy skies. But more specifically, I needed thin clouds, scattered thin clouds, ideally high altitude cirrus clouds, because if they were thin, and especially if they were high altitude, they would allow enough of the sunlight to come through that it wasn't dim and overcast looking, but it would diffuse the light. Now, like I said, That type of cloud cover is not particularly common, and when it is there, it doesn't last very long. And so I knew that this very specific lighting I was after was just going to be unlikely. But I did get it. Now, to show you the comparison of this type of lighting versus just normal sun, I'll show you a picture here that I took just a few minutes after, once the cloud cover had burned off. And you can see how much darker the shadows are and how much more contrast is added to the scene. But most interestingly, in my opinion, is you can see how much darker the sky is. And this is because without that cloud cover, with the much brighter light levels, I needed to reduce my exposure. Doing that caused the sky way off in the distance to come out much darker. These days when I'm doing midday photos like this, I don't really like the deep blue skies. I like a much lighter, softer blue. And so in addition to the shadows being a little harder than I would like, I also don't like that the sky is so much darker. So that first exposure gave me the light that I wanted. But there are several things about the photo that I'm just not happy with. First off, there's just too many cars, like I said. It's blocking the building. You can't even really see into the laundromat at all. So that's strike one. Strike two, those orange cones. Don't like them. They're distracting. And it's just clutter added to the foreground of the photo with no real benefit to the story. Additionally, this truck off to the left, I went back and forth on whether or not that was a good addition to the photo. I kind of like that it tells the story of there's a delivery going on today. But I think ultimately it's just too big. It's blocking way too much of the building, so I don't like that huge truck being there either. And then finally, this might seem like a stupid one, but I hate that Mercedes. That car is too nice and too high-end and too clean for a scene like this. It's attracting way too much of the attention. If it was like a junky old, I don't know, Buick, sure, cool. But a brand spanking new Mercedes at a laundromat? It just doesn't make any sense to me, so I didn't like it. And so as much as I tried to get myself to like this photo because I knew that the timing was so rare, I wasn't probably going to get another chance to shoot it under the light that I wanted, I just couldn't bring myself to be happy with the photo. Now, as rare as that lighting is, I was fortunate enough to find myself in Fullerton with a completely overcast sky, but the forecast on my app said it's clearing. And I knew that cloud cover was going to burn off any minute. And if I could time it for just when it was partly burned off, I could get my shot. And so I waited in my car for 15 minutes for it to burn off. And I waited 30 minutes, and then 45 minutes. And then eventually, it finally started to burn off. I ran out of my car with my camera and fired off an exposure and ended up with this. And this is what I had in mind. Not only is the light even softer than the first one, which is closer to what I had pre-visualized, but the actual elements, the cars, the timing, everything about it is better. There's no one walking through the scene. There's not a bunch of distracting cars in that front row of parking spots. There's no big truck blocking the building. And there's very minimal human element. Just a few ghost figures through the windows. I love that I can see into the laundromat and I can see the washers right there through the front door, so there's a perfect opening between the cars for that. I love that with that big delivery truck gone, I can actually see the left side of the building. It also exposed this trash can which had been bashed in, which I think is cool. I love little elements like that where it's one little remnant of something that happened one day way back in the past. And then my favorite part of the whole photo, right next to the front door of the liquor store is a bike leaning against the vending machines. And on the handlebars is a basket. And in the basket is a dog, just chilling, looking off in the distance. And yes, that is a real dog. This teenager rode up on his bike, leaned his bike against the vending machine, went in to get some candy or whatever, and the dog just sat there, just chilling, baby. And I love that element because it is kind of strange when you first see it. Like, is that a real dog? Is that a stuffed animal dog? I don't know. And it tells a little bit of story of what's going on at that liquor store on that particular day. So I finally ended up with the frame I wanted. It took a lot of patience, but now that it's done, I feel pretty damn good about it. I'm satisfied with all the photos from this little video, and I hope you enjoyed looking at them. But more than that, hope you enjoyed following me along as I ventured out and took some photos in Fullerton, California. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.